to develop, and we will be across all of those updates and bring them to you here at NewsX World. We move now to North America, and polling stations are now open all across Canada, with Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island and Labrador joining the vote. Voters are making their way to the polls. Before we dive deeper into the race, let's have a quick look at Canada's electoral system. Now, it mirrors the UK's Westminster model, where voters select representatives, known as MPs, by riding. The party with the most seats typically forms the government, and its leader becomes Prime Minister. A majority win requires 172 seats, but if no party reaches this figure, a minority government can be formed. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has weighed in on Canada's election. Trump, whose tariffs and annexation calls have become one of the primary topics in the campaign, has stated encouraged Canadians to vote for the best leader. According to him, voters should choose someone who would slash taxes, boost military strength, and even floated the idea of Canada becoming the 51st US state. We did just show you the graphic there from that Truth Social post. Trump continuing with the rhetoric around Canada being the 51st state. I would like to dive in to what Trump has said with our next guest, Andrew Latham, a professor of international relations at Macalester College and a senior fellow who is joining us from Ottawa, Canada. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us today. The election is ongoing. Polls are now open across all of Canada. Trump's comments have also continued on election day. What can you tell us about Trump's influence in this election and how his words might be shaping voter opinion?
Well, for a while, it was shaping voter opinion very, very powerfully. A resurrection of Canadian nationalism, even in places like Quebec, where that hasn't been common in recent decades. But over the last week or so, Trump's influence on this election has receded a little bit, and the sort of deeper Canadian political issues about cost of living, about housing costs, about all of those kind of mundane, quotidian issues, those have reemerged. And it remains to be seen how that's going to play with respect to Mark Carney's Liberal Party versus Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party. The New Democratic Party is finished, as far as I can tell. It's really down to this Liberal versus Conservative piece. And now that the non-Trump issues have trumped, if I could put it that way, the Trump issues, it remains to be seen how that's going to shake out. If I were a betting man, I would say that Mark Carney's Liberals are going to end up with a majority in the House of Commons, and therefore he will end up, Mark Carney, as the Prime Minister. But it's really neck and neck at this point.
Absolutely, Andrew. I'm hoping on screen we can get up Trump's Truth Social post once again. I just want to read a section of it to you and get your opinion on what has been said, because the rhetoric and the words that Trump is continuing to use even on election day could be extremely pivotal given current public sentiment in Canada. He says, "No more artificially drawn line from many years ago. Look how beautiful this landmass would be. Free access with no border, all positives with no negatives. It was meant to be. America can no longer subsidize Canada with the hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we have been spending in the past. It makes no sense unless Canada is a state." Now, this rhetoric from Trump, this post that we're seeing on Truth Social, it's making his opinions extremely clear. How have the leaders been fighting against this, and how do you think they will react, whoever is chosen as Prime Minister in the coming years, to counteract this rhetoric from Donald Trump?
You know, annexing Canada has been an American delusion for about 200 years. Canadians, by and large, for the most part, across the board, have resisted this on the battlefield in 1776 and 1812. The reason why the American White House is white is because the U.S. forces pillaged what was then called York, but which we now call Toronto, and the British and Canadian forces responded by torching what was then the Pink House, and it had to be repainted and whitewashed. Canadians have by and large, no interest in becoming the 51st state. And by the way, there are 10 provinces and 3 territories in Canada, so it really wouldn't be the 51st state. It would be the 63rd state taken together. And given Canada's predilections, it would result in a permanent Democratic Party majority in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. Really, I don't think that Donald Trump and his acolytes and supporters have any interest in that. And it's not going to happen. And as I said earlier, earlier in this election campaign, this was a huge issue. But now, in the last week, and now the last day, and the people are voting today, literally, it is back to more important day-to-day issues about cost of living and things like that.
Yes.
Canada, I will tell you this right now, I'll bet my bottom dollar, Canada will never become part of the United States because its very identity is constructed in opposition to the United States.
Yes, Andrew, absolutely. We are coming to the end of time on this discussion, but as we show some images of the leaders who are hoping to win this election, what can you tell us about some of those issues that you mentioned there at home, away from global issues, that are really shaping this election as Canada heads to the polls?
It varies by region. If you look at the province of Alberta, for example, one of the big issues is to whom should they sell their oil and gas? Is it going to be to the United States? And that part of Canada has been selling at sub-market prices, selling oil and gas to the U.S. for almost 100 years now. If you look at Ontario and Toronto in particular, the issues really are less to do with the United States and more to do with just the cost of living. Young people, millennials, Gen Xers and Gen Zers, if I can put it that way, are increasingly feeling like they can't start a life because the cost of housing is just too high. And then if you go farther east to Quebec, there are still residual kinds of separatist sentiments, although those have been, I think, sublimated to a large extent. So it's very regional in Canada. The upshot, though, is by and large, Canadians are voting today on the basis of Canadian issues, not delusional American annexationist fantasies.
Andrew Latham, thank you ever so much for providing us an insight there. Of course, with Canada heading to the polls, that is 3/4 of the eligible voters after